Schemes. So I work with Mark. Many of you would have met Mark already today. Also a colleague of mine here, Patrick, who'll be talking to you later on, former colleague Brian McDonald. So just to explain, we are the representative body for the group water scheme sector in Ireland, okay? There's about 350 community-owned group water schemes across the country. These are group water schemes that are communities that have come together to supply drinking water to the area where there was no public piped water supply up to now, up until the scheme was formed. So this scheme here is Stranooden Group Water Scheme. I'm happy to introduce the chairman of this scheme, who's Paddy Ward. Manager of the scheme is James McClone, and their source protection officer, Ross MacDonald, who's going to be your tour guide along with Patrick McCabe here today, okay? So the reason, I suppose, why we wanted to bring you to this particular scheme is that this is a scheme that has, I suppose, not only is it providing drinking water services to over 1,800 connections in this region. So it's quite a large rural scheme from across the country. So not alone are they providing that service and providing it very successfully for how many years, Paddy? 40, 50 years?
About 40 years.
40 years. The scheme have come to realise that if they want to protect their source, if they want to protect their water quality, that they need to not just think of end of pipe solutions in terms of treatment, that they need to start look, because there are a couple of area issues, I suppose, within the catchment where we're seeing elevated pesticides, for example, elevated sediment levels, and all of that is coming in. It's putting a treatment plant under pressure. So how do we resolve that? How do we deal with that? And I suppose given that it's a community-owned organisation, the scheme have a direct link with the farmers in the catchment, with the community, people that are living, working in the area. And I suppose it's trying to leverage that community spirit to help put measures in place around the catchment in targeted areas that where they'll get the best bang for their buck. I don't know if you know that term, but basically you invest in something here, you get the best value from it. So it has to be done in a targeted way because the catchment is massive. It's a very, very big catchment. And while we would love, and I'm sure the scheme would love, to put mitigation measures and nature-based solution measures in place right across the catchment, practically right now with the finances available, it's not an option. So we need to target where we go. So I suppose from our perspective as a national representative organisation, we see our sector being uniquely placed to work, I suppose, not alone with other schemes across the country, with communities to protect water quality, but it's part of the bigger picture, the bigger environmental picture, the bigger water picture. Drinking water is one aspect, but we have our natural waters, we have our flooding issues, we have climate change, we have biodiversity crisis, etc. And what we're finding is that when the scheme go out into the community and talk to people, they might people have different interests, different agendas, different ideas about what might work, etc. But what we want to try to achieve is a measure or multiple measures that can have multiple environmental benefits. So if we're going in and we're trying to, for example, ultimately protect water quality and put in a measure that's going to improve water quality, that can actually, we can also enhance the environment, we can also enhance biodiversity in that area. And sometimes people latch on to those messages quicker. There's a lot of you here today, as from what I can gather, that are maybe starting out on the process. And while this is a small scale project, I think the learnings from projects like this in terms of the interactions with people, why did people decide to come on board, to get involved, what drew their attention to it, and there's probably mixed. There's no one silver bullet for all this. It's a really varied process. So I really hope you can take away from today the experience that certainly we have learned through the scheme, and that James and in particular Ross have learned through working with people in the catchment, working with the community. So that's really all I have to say. You're very welcome, even though I'm welcoming you and I'm not even from here, but we're delighted to see, because I suppose this was a pilot project, a national pilot project, and in this project in particular, we've identified the potential, and we want to see this replicated now across the country. Okay, so yeah, I hope you have a good few hours, and that's as much as I have to say.
Very good. Yeah, and I suppose it puts everything into context of why did we start here. We're primarily a drinking water supply. This is what we do, but it obviously makes much more sense to protect water at the start rather than at the end of the pipe, as Barry has alluded to. Do you want to say a couple of words or whatever?
No, I think everything has been covered from the point of view of what the scheme does. Obviously, we have a water treatment plant here that takes the source water and turns it into potable water for use. And I suppose the scheme itself is probably most concerned with taking that raw water and turning it into water that the consumer can use. That said, though, we have drinking water regulations to meet, but more recently we have discovered through constant monitoring of raw water that we obviously need to do a job on our raw water as well, and that's where the work that Ross has undertaken over the last few years, and indeed Paddy McCabe here beside him, have sort of come to life. Graham here as well was sort of the pioneering mind of bringing and organising what turned into this present pilot project. It was Brian that sort of brought it together, and then Paddy and Ross here were able to drive it and get the measures installed that you're going to see here later on. So other than this is a normal, it's a typical water treatment plant for Monaghan for surface waters. It's run by a specialist contractor, so the group water scheme itself doesn't actually partake in or is responsible for the actual treatment process. We are responsible for overseeing that the treatment process is doing what it's supposed to do, and the buck sort of stops with us if compliance isn't met. So we monitor what the specialist contractor does. Specialist contractor in this particular site is a French company, Veolia. I'm sure some of you have probably heard of Veolia. So they take on that duty. Ourselves monitor that, and the local authority monitor us all. So we're mostly sort of occupied with quality assurance, compliance, network maintenance, your bursts and making sure that people have water. And as I say now, we concentrate more now, or we're concentrating a lot now on the raw water pre-treatment. So that's pretty much it.
Very good, very good.